From the Peruvian and Colombian border to the Atlantic Ocean, 1/5 of the world's fresh water rolls on and on for nearly 4,000 miles, cutting through the northern half of the South American continent. This is the mighty Amazon River of Brazil. The Amazon is the second longest river in the entire world, second only to the Nile of Egypt. The Amazon basin has more than 1,000 large rivers which penetrate 1,500,000 square miles, which is equivalent to over half of the area of the United States. Every hour, this river discharges 170 billion gallons of water into the Atlantic Ocean. That's 12 times the amount of the Mississippi River. Quite often the name Amazon invokes the images of naked Indians with their exotic painted faces and unusual garments. But in fact, these primitive people constitute less than 2% of the population of the people who live along the Amazon River. Throughout this huge land, there are remote villages and several modern cities. Hundreds of thousands of people live on boats. Other tens of thousands make their homes in the forests and along the riverbanks of the Amazon. In fact, there are some 11 million people living in this area called the Amazonas, comprising 5 northern states of Brazil. In every sense of the word, this particular part of the globe is one of the most neglected in the world, as far as the gospel of Jesus Christ is concerned. Why? Simply because it's a very difficult place to penetrate, with 90% of the area being jungle swamps and thick forests. But there are nearly 11 million souls to reach, and wherever there are people, we're commanded by the Lord Himself to go and share the good news. Responding to this challenge, Every Home for Christ launched Operation Trans-Amazonas in the late 1970s. It was a practical, systematic plan to reach every single home in the Amazon basin. To reach every home, EHC needed boats. 4 large boats soon were called to action along this 4,000-mile river. Each boat could accommodate as many as 50 people and was in a sense a roving Every Home for Christ office. There were living quarters for pioneer missionaries and a warehouse for the gospel literature EHC supporters helped provide to be distributed to spiritually hungry people. It was a challenging task, but key to fulfilling the EHC vision in the Amazonas. Each boat also had to serve as the base for 25 small canoes. There are nearly 16,000 miles of river in the Amazon basin. These 4 large boats, of course, were designed to travel through deeper waters. But in order to reach the remote villages and hamlets, canoes became the only means of travel. Each was operated by 2 pioneer missionaries who traveled deep into the interior of the jungles where big boats couldn't go. Manaus is the only major city in the heart of the Amazon River. The EHC Office for Operation Trans-Amazonas was strategically located in this city and was supervised by a native of the Amazonas who understood the customs and culture. Manaus, with its colorful history, dates back to the boom days of the last half of the 19th century, when rubber plantations were a source of tremendous wealth. Today, Manaus has the largest floating dock facilities in the world and is a major port city of Brazil. Operation Trans-Amazonas was not only an effective and fruitful plan, it was people. The purpose of the outreach was to go to all the people in the Amazon basin. The plan was carried out not by machines or computers, but by people we call pioneer missionaries. These young men are between 18 and 24 years of age. They're all unmarried, as they may have to be away from home and family for 10 months a year. Each pioneer missionary is recommended and endorsed by local churches or Christian leaders who know the ministry of EHC. Each candidate is carefully trained and equipped for the task ahead. After preliminary interviews to be qualified, They go through 4 weeks of intensive training. The first 2 weeks are spent in studying the Bible and the purpose of the Every Home campaign. For 12 hours each day for 14 days, these dedicated young people are trained by 4 outstanding Brazilian pastors.
Vamos ver quem é que vai ler aí para nós. Nós vamos aqui falar sobre o Rio Amazonas e o mapa do Amazonas está aqui diante de nós.
The third week is spent in studying the geography of the Amazon basin, so that when the pioneer missionaries are assigned certain areas, they possess basic knowledge of the region they are going to evangelize. On the final week of training, the pioneer missionaries are taken out to the river on boats and canoes to actually see the area they had studied in the previous week. After the training period is over, the pioneer missionaries return to the EHC office in Manaus to share their experiences and express their opinions, so that if necessary, changes are made for a particular area, and then it's time to go to work. We invite you now to go with a team of these pioneer missionaries upstream to the central Amazon River. Behind us is the city of Manaus. They have just completed their 4 weeks of intensive training and have gained actual Every Home for Christ experience through their distribution work in Manaus. Beyond the horizon lie thousands of villages that must be reached. Always the day will begin on the mother boat with a session of prayer and instruction from the team leader. He discusses what the villages will be like, points to remember, how to react to hostile people, what not to say if the villagers happen to reject the gospel message. From the first house by the cliff, pioneer missionaries fan out to their assigned sections of the village. They don't just place the printed message there and leave. This warm human touch is a very important element in motivating people to read the message received from the pioneer missionaries. Each worker, not only here in the Amazonas, but across the world, is specifically trained and instructed to share a few words of spoken witness along with the printed message. Moving out into unreached areas, pioneer missionaries stop at 2 or 3 isolated homes, as well as the more populated towns along the river. They visit each house without missing one single home. Most of the villagers are friendly and receive the printed messages with an open mind. While the pioneer missionaries are working in the villages, the boat crew is busy catching fish for the evening meal. Pioneer missionaries always learn to provide for themselves whenever possible, especially in remote areas. Their training helps enable them to use whatever resources may help them in their ministry. As the evening shadows signal the coming of night, the pioneer missionaries come down to the shore and gather dry wood to cook their meal. "It's been a good day," one says to another. He responds, "Yes, there was not one rejection today. Praise the Lord." After some recreation along the river, a simple meal, and some spiritual fellowship, the pioneer missionaries board the boat and move on out into the night. But there's joy in each heart. Every home in this area of Brazil has been reached with the gospel of Jesus. These workers, and many hundreds to follow over several decades, would finally see the first complete coverage of all Brazil finished in the year 2000. Some 48 million homes were visited, and over 1,200,000 people responded and were followed up with Bible lessons, including many thousands in this region called Amazonas. Today, the second coverage of Brazil has begun. The work must go on because entire new population centers of hundreds of thousands need the gospel. Join us in Brazil and beyond as the night draws near to give everyone everywhere at least one opportunity to experience the love of Christ. Together, we can make it happen.